Hello, viewers. I'm Veena Aiyer, founder and CEO of QRKIEZ, an app designated for neurodivergent individual, families, and allies. Please check us out at App Store and Play Store and download our app today. Today, I'm joined by Leah Brighton. Leah is founder and principal of Dream Career Today. She's an award-winning business leader and an executive communication coach. She has won honors such as Queen's Golden Jubilee Medal and Top 40 Under 40. We're so glad to have you, Leah. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Veena. I'm so delighted to be here, and I just love what you're building and your mission, and can't wait to have a chat today.
That's so awesome. So let's get started. Leah, tell us about Dream Career Today. What inspired you to build this company and how do you help professionals achieve their goal?
Hmm. So, as far as I've been in the world of, hiring, executive coaching, and communication for about 15 years now. And across all of it, in my most recent career, as far as being an executive communication coach and coach in general for people in their careers, I just found that there were consistent barriers that people faced when they were really wanting to advance and get noticed, like just as a core foundation for where they were at. And so the first step really was being able to be on the radar, whether that was applying for a new job or just being on the radar, internally within their current company. And I saw across all of the thousands of candidates that I've worked with just this incredible frustration. And I realized that, folks needed to be able to actually get noticed. But then what happened is once folks got noticed, they realized that suddenly they had the spotlight on them, but they didn't know what to say. They
Mm,
might have gotten nervous or have anxiety or have other things that kind of take over for recognizing that this is a very different situation. They kind of froze, even though they often might know exactly what to say in another scenario. But at that moment, that critical moment, maybe it's for that interview, maybe it's for that negotiation or that meeting with a boss or a client meeting, they just froze. So they realized that, for them, in order for them to actually ascend within their career, there was a next step. They had to both get noticed and also they had to be able to command respect, right? Have that kind of personal brand that communicated to their peers around them that they
mm,
had the capabilities, they had the skill sets, regardless of maybe how they might have initially presented, right? Regardless of what differences they might have when you look at them or when you first, whatever your first impressions may be. But the importance of really having that professional brand and
mm,
being able to have and command that respect was so important. And then what happened was, folks, when I was working with them, I saw that they finally got this respect and they were able to have this professional brand. They
mm,
had this opportunity that they were so excited about, but they realized that they didn't necessarily have the authority,
mm,
as in they didn't have like the network, right? Or peers to support them. And it was incredibly frustrating because suddenly they were noticed, they were finally noticed. They
mm,
finally had like the presence to show up as a leader or show up as a confident individual in whatever role they were. But when they went forward to try and put themselves out for new opportunities and roles, they just didn't know what to do next. They didn't have the people behind them to support them in those new endeavors. And so that's why when I realized that folks needed to have the authority in the sense that they need to have a tribe of people who supported them, which is in part what I think what you're doing is so important, is that you're helping to create this tribe of people to come together. And then what happened was once people finally, had this tribe, had the brand, were noticed, they sometimes weren't actually paid.
mm,
They put themselves out, they build up their own courage to apply for an opportunity, and they realize that, wait a minute, once they got an offer, it wasn't exactly the offer they were hoping for.
mm,
And so being able to then help them, identify how to actually get not only promoted in the title they want, but also paid. And this
mm,
is really what I have seen, within this career more recently, as I've been in, hiring executive talent and search, is what I call the system that I just described, the executive leadership system.
mm,
And this framework with those four pillars that really has enabled people to unlock new opportunities And it's actually grounded in my first career when I was a speech scientist. So I used to be a speech language pathologist. That's my grad school and undergrad, master's, etc. And I worked with a number of neurodivergent patients and individuals across their lifespan.
Mm,
Also, people who had strokes and tumors and Parkinson's, but
mm,
quite a few who were on the spectrum, right, of
mm.
varying degrees and capacities, and really helping them create strategies, create frameworks, create, therapy and intervention so that they could truly thrive in their career, thrive in their environments, whether it's at home or at school or socially in whatever setting. And really, what I see now as far as Dream Career today, with this current company, it's an amazing opportunity to truly be able to bring these worlds together and help people who I know don't always feel like they have the strongest voice and then help to empower them so that they can find their voice and use it and actually be heard and seen and promoted and paid.
That's so awesome, Leah. And thanks for sharing your backstory as well about being a speech pathologist and
Yeah,
working with neurodivergent individuals.
yeah,
So, my follow-up question is obviously, the executive functioning or executive communication is crucial for everyone, regardless of their neurotype. But I would say neurodivergent people might face different challenges because the divergent means their social communication style is slightly different. So, how do you help them? And is there any specific strategies that you use to specifically help the address any gaps that a neurodivergent individual might have?
Yeah, definitely. So I think it's always really helpful when I was practicing as a speech pathologist, I would often say that generally we are all very similar. So we have generally like a head, two arms, legs, a heart, right? But individually we are different. And
Mm,
our individual differences are important. So for example, right, I'm a woman, other people, even though they have two arms, a head, two legs, they're guys, right? So these are there are individual differences. And similarly, people who are neurodivergent are generally may have, the same kind of terminology and way they identify themselves, but there are still important differences for how that presents within their life.
mm,
And so when I share whatever strategies or recommendations, it's helpful to know that there can be general suggestions, but your individual differences are really important to consider as well.
mm,
And painting like a really wide brush is always, I say that with caution, and I would say it's not the best approach or idea. But in general, for anybody who is neurodivergent, what can be helpful is to do like an internal assessment, right? What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What maybe are your triggers? And how you can maybe identify your triggers are what do you find like especially distracting or challenging within, say, a professional environment. And so sometimes when we say things like triggers or whatever, people don't know actually how to reflect on that and what
mm,
questions to ask themselves. So that's a way you can like unpack what that word actually means and tangibly within the specific setting of your work environment. So not necessarily triggers when you're, out at a Christmas party or event or out in a at a restaurant, but specifically at work.
mm,
And even more specifically in different environments when you are at work. Because those can be different when you're, for example, by yourself at your desk versus in a team meeting versus on a Zoom meeting. There can be different things that kind of cue you for certain reactions or responses. And then think about, what would possibly be depending on, yeah, depending on where you're at or where your strengths and weaknesses are, you can think about certain scripts, right? So often with my patients who were on the spectrum or had neurodivergence, we would often look at, what are certain frameworks or scripts
mm,
that you could follow and apply reliably. So a script, for example, is what we can say like if you go to a restaurant, there's a
mm,
very specific script for like what you can expect. The
mm,
server will greet you, they'll take you to your table, you'll get the menu, you'll get water, you'll order your food, you'll eat your food, and then you pay and leave.
mm,
So that whole sequence is a script.
mm,
And similarly, there are scripts that you can follow in the workplace as well.
mm,
So thinking about them beforehand, before maybe you're triggered or have like heightened anxiety or uncertainty or freeze in a certain moment, it can be helpful to plan ahead of time to think about them and know that you can execute it when you need them.
That's so awesome. I think it's so insightful, right? Like planning beforehand. Like these things would happen if I go to office, I have a meeting, people might ask me these questions, they might interrupt me. So anticipating those things and preparing for that. So that's such a valuable advice. So Leah, like I don't know, you already mentioned this. Every person is going to be different. They have their own set of strengths and challenges. But specifically for neurodivergent clients, are there any specific challenges that you would say are mostly what they need to work on, and that's how you help them, or the strategies that you feel is more beneficial for someone who's specifically a neurodivergent person? It could be even asking for accommodation or being open about their differences in a workplace. They might feel like, I don't want to tell it to everybody, I might be discriminated. Or do you encourage them to be open about it? So, would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah. I mean, I think that everybody is different in what their comfort level is. And I would want people to operate within whatever that might be, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I do think it can be helpful if you have really specific, like specified adaptations. And in some ways, I think we now live in a world where a lot of people have different requests or
Yeah.
modifications for what their preferences are, what their needs are within the workplace. I mean, I've worked internally within HR teams, and there are lots of different requests that come in.
Yeah.
And so I would encourage people if they do feel like they have certain needs that would really make them also, perform at their best, perform in a way that they're proud, right? That they feel really showcases their skill set and their brilliance. And I also feel that when you present it in that capacity, right, within that light where it's obviously to meet whatever needs that you have, but also it's to recognize that it's going to also help the company as a whole.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, your performance, like your peak performance, is going to be beneficial to the company and their like bottom line. So most companies know that and recognize that, which is why you have been selected as the candidate or to be promoted.
Mm.
Um, and just knowing that, to have the confidence and being able to kind of maybe frame it within that capacity can be helpful. And importantly, as I mentioned before, having kind of a script and practicing it, like actually practicing what you're going to
Mm.
say beforehand. So if there's a whole area, so typically your language, we're going to go a bit sciencey here, folks, but
That's cool.
typically I can't help it. I can't help it. But your language, there's a whole area of your brain. It's in your the left side of your brain, your left hemisphere. And there are all these specific areas of your brain that are all attached to your speech production, so how you speak, and your comprehension, what you understand, called your Broca's and your Wernicke's area. And importantly, your speech, how you speak, is a muscle. It's learnable. Just like every other muscle, if you think of
Mhm.
athletes or yourself, if you like are learning anything when we were kids, like learning how to walk. So when you have those kinds of conversations that are coming up, what I find a lot of times people think about them, so they go into their head and they just think about them over and over and go into
Mhm.
all the different scenarios. But what I would encourage you to do is actually practice speaking out loud
Mm.
what you're going to say and how you could possibly like navigate different scenarios.
That's so awesome. And that's such a different way of thinking, right? That your speech muscle, part of your brain is also a muscle, and any muscle that you work out, often it's going to be toned. So your speech muscle could also be toned, and you could be a great orator. That's such a great insight. Leah, you have worked with so many clients and so many amazing people. Would love to know from you your favorite success story, someone who was probably neurodivergent and was struggling and worked with you and was able to get that dream job or get that dream promotion. Would love to hear that.
Yeah. So I think there are quite a few or a range of individuals I've worked with. And maybe some individuals, say within software engineering, have had like a lot of amazing technical skill sets.
Mm.
Wow, just phenomenal, like
Mm.
truly phenomenally gifted. But sometimes it can feel challenging to be able to like communicate what their gifts may be.
Mm.
And I was actually just speaking with an ambitious professional I was working with earlier today, and I was reminding him that, when you communicate, there are two main ways that you can look at how you're sharing something, right? How you're making sure that you're actually heard and being seen. So there's both your content, so what you say, and your container, which is how you say it. And I believe that all of your ideas are like precious, like diamonds, like jewels
Hmm.
and diamonds that you have. But if that content, so your precious jewels, which are your ideas, are in like a shoebox, they're going to be perceived very differently
Hmm.
than if they're in like a Tiffany's box.
Hmm.
And when you present how you communicate for your ideas in a Tiffany's box, that's when your ideas are truly like valued for the
Hmm.
gifts that they are.
Yeah.
And so there was one individual who I was working with, and he just couldn't get past being a manager. Like he kept on, he was a manager, which was great, but he really wanted to be like a senior manager, director,
Hmm.
and really move up within his career. And he couldn't get past it and kept on hitting that ceiling.
Hmm.
And the reason when I was working with him is that he could feel it. He could feel that he wasn't able to like win the hearts and souls of the people that he was speaking with. Because as you ascend in your career, you need to have more buy-in, is what a lot of people call it. Can you get the team to collaborate and come together? And so there are some specific key strategies based on the science of speech, so based on my first career as a speech pathologist, that I know if you use them in your speaking as a manager or as an employee at the workplace, you can communicate that warmth. You can communicate that invitation. And once he was able to do that, he was then hired as a director in his next role. And it
Wow.
was so exciting for him because I knew he had the gifts. He had the knowledge, the technical skills. He had the content and the diamonds, right, for all of his
Hmm.
ideas, but it wasn't being heard. And as soon it was heard within that Tiffany's box and
Yeah.
just changing a little bit for his speech muscles, right, how he actually presented so that people could hear him, he was suddenly promoted, he was paid, and he has like had a flourishing career after.
That's so awesome to hear, and such a beautiful analogy, right? Like instead of shoebox, put it in a Tiffany box, like how it looks, so that people perceive your ideas for what it is, the gem, the jewelry. Such a great insight. Leah, so if someone wants to work with you today, what is the best way for them to get started? Like where do they find you? How do they sign up? Or what do you think they should be doing to get on your radar?
Well, I would love to welcome folks. We're going to actually be having a seminar, an online seminar where people can learn more about the executive leadership system that I
Mhm.
spoke about earlier today, as well as more of those details and strategies that you can apply during our online seminar. So you can be in the comfort of your home, you can be around the world. We've actually had a number of people join from from Norway and France and around the world as well, across Canada and the US. So you can join us at www.dreamcareertoday.com/executive leadership. And I would love to welcome folks to the seminar where you can ask your questions, and importantly, I'll be able to translate them based on my experience as a speech language pathologist to really give you like tactical, actionable strategies that you can apply. And I think that's really, yeah, but it's part of the reason why I feel what you are making, Veena, is so important and what you're building is because I know, and I think about often some of the people the patients that I used to work with, right? And the experience entering the workforce,
Hmm.
just because having meaningful work is such a core part of our identity as an adult, right? We often identify ourselves as, you know, whatever, as a teacher or as a nurse or as a
Yeah,
software engineer
your
or as
profession.
whatever your profession is.
Hmm.
And so I really feel it's so important that individuals are able to access that. And I mean, I'd also say, personally, growing up, I had an aunt who had like quite severe cerebral palsy. And I think I mentioned before when we were
Yeah.
speaking. And yeah, I grew up watching her, trying to find her way for whatever kind of opportunities that may happen. And that sense of like assuredness and being that we tie to our work is so important. And so I would love to welcome people to this upcoming seminar. We will be sure to include a link, but it's just at dreamcareertoday.com/executive leadership.
Thank you so much. And viewers, we will be at QRKIEZ newsletter also be sharing the link and reminder for this webinar. And you will also be able to find it in our app. So please join in. And you met Leah. Now you know all the great things that you're going to learn from her. So I encourage everybody to learn and understand more and definitely sign up for it. Leah, it was so awesome talking to you. Finally, is there any parting thoughts? Like, I would love to know your general observation about how the world, or especially the corporate world, has changed or is changing, is becoming inclusive, or any more work that needs to be done. So we just love to hear any parting thoughts that you might have.
Yeah. I mean, I really encourage people to just go out there and apply. Apply, raise your hand for that promotion, apply for that job or opportunity, and just don't count yourself out
Mhm.
before you apply. I think it can be, when I've spoken to people who are neurodivergent or have different exceptionalities, I mean, I'm also on I serve on the Ministry of Education's Advisory Council for Special Education on the board. And I know how people can feel like they just automatically count themselves out. They don't, as
Yeah,
in, they don't even apply. They don't even press submit for that application. And it's so important that you do apply. So have the courage. If you need to remind yourself of this, you can listen to this recording. Like I encourage you, you can do it and just apply because you're then letting them decide, right? You're then at least raising your hand to be part of the consideration and application pool. And unless you do, nobody will ever know about you. And
that's
you'll
true.
never then gain the skill sets, right? You'll never gain the practice. You'll never flex those muscles to then stack those skills. So I really encourage folks to apply for any opportunity that they're interested in. And, obviously, like do some of the strategies that I'd mentioned earlier in this, conversation today. You can certainly learn more strategies at the seminar that I just
Mhm.
mentioned, but I wholeheartedly encourage people to really apply and believe in themselves and that they can do it.
That's such a powerful thought. And yeah, viewers, like, don't self-eliminate yourself. Definitely apply. And I hope that all of you enjoyed all this wonderful conversation and insights that Leah shared. And I'm going to reiterate, we will be sharing that webinar that Leah mentioned on our newsletter and on our website as well as on our app. So people who have not signed up for a newsletter, please go to www.quirkies.com and sign up for newsletters. You will get to hear more such inspirational stories and blogs. And as I said, our app is live on Apple and Android, so please go and download it. And definitely check out dreamcareer.com/executive communication, right? And you would also be able to find the link there. So yeah, we're looking forward to see you all on the webinar and have a great day. And thank you so much, Leah.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it, Veena. A
Awesome.
pleasure.